Welcome everyone to the Community IT Innovators webinar series. And we're so happy that you could join us for today's webinar on our updated nonprofit cybersecurity incident report. This report will look at the different types of attacks that occurred in 2021 at small and mid-sized nonprofit organizations in our network. Using real data, Matt Eshleman, our Community IT CTO, will show us trends in cybersecurity attacks and give tips on how to respond and on prevention. So Matt, if you can go to slide 2, we're going to talk a little bit about our learning objectives. For today, after the webinar today, you should be able to understand the cybersecurity landscape for nonprofits. You should be able to understand our community IT approach to cybersecurity. We have a framework and we're going to talk a little bit about it. You should be familiar with the incident types and data from the 2021 report. And Matt is going to go over some definitions. So don't worry if you're not up to the most of the minute terminology, because we're going to cover all of that. And then we're going to learn basic steps to take to secure your nonprofit. We encourage you to submit questions and comments through the Q&A feature today. And many of you submitted questions at registration that Matt is going to do his best to answer. You can always follow up with Matt afterwards. We will have his contact information to get some time to talk to him because we know we won't be able to cover everything today. It's a pretty big topic. We also have several free cybersecurity resources on our website if you haven't looked already, including a short self-assessment quiz. There is a downloadable playbook that walks through our cybersecurity framework in more detail. And there are multiple previous webinars on cybersecurity available as videos, podcasts, or transcripts. And all the links that we talk about today or drop in the chat, we're also going to make links in the transcripts. So you don't have to worry too much if you miss one. We will make them all available later. And we are also recording today's conversation, and the video and podcast will be available on our website, so you don't need to worry too much about taking notes. And after the webinar, you'll receive an email with a link. It's also posted on our YouTube channel and as a podcast episode in 2 parts within a week. And I also want to let you know that when you close the webinar today, you will see a survey link. And this really helps us improve our presentations. So if you take the survey today, you'll be entered to win a $25 gift certificate. So be sure to click on it when we're done with the webinar. If you happen to be watching on YouTube right now, we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you'll get the updates every time we post a new webinar. And we also invite you to subscribe to our email list from our website. We don't send a lot of emails, but we do update you on webinars that we're offering every month, so you can attend in real time and ask your questions. Before we begin, if you're not familiar with Community IT, a little bit about us. We are a 100% employee-owned managed services provider. We provide outsourced IT support, and we work exclusively with nonprofit organizations. Our mission is to help nonprofits accomplish your missions through the effective use of technology. We have about 40 staff. We started in the DC metropolitan area over 20 years ago, and we now serve nonprofits across the United States. We're technology experts, and we are consistently named a top 500 managed services provider by Channel Futures, which is an honor we received again in 2021. So let's get started with the discussion today with the cybersecurity incidents we've seen. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Carolyn Woodard. I'm the marketing director at Community IT, and I'll be monitoring the Q&A and chat and helping Matt in his presentation. So Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks, Carolyn. It's great to be delivering the session today and also doing the webinar with you. I think this is our first time doing one of these presentations together. So as Carolyn said, my name is Matt Eshleman, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Community IT and the author of the incident report. So this is our 4th time that we've been delivering this incident report, which really looks at the unique cybersecurity incidents that face our nonprofit clients. So Community IT supports actively about 150 different nonprofit organizations, which represent about 6,000 staff. So we have a unique perspective on the cybersecurity incidents in this sector. So we've learned a little bit about Carolyn and myself, I'd really like to get a chance to know the audience. So we'll go ahead and launch a poll here. So I'm curious for the folks that are on the webinar today, if you could just respond to the 2 questions that we have up here. First question is just around your role at your organization. And then also to get a sense of kind of how well you feel like your organization is protected related to cybersecurity. So we'll get that, give that a moment or two for you to respond to those responses, and share that out so we have a sense for the audience here today. I'll also just give another plug. I really do appreciate any of the feedback that you would offer, and so please take advantage of that incentive we have to hang on to the end and enter that drawing for a $25 gift card. And Carolyn, where are we doing the gift card to?
Usually we would do one to Amazon, but it depends on the person who is drawn out of the hat. So if there is an alternative that you would prefer, we can see what we can do. We'll work it out.
Sounds great. Sounds good. All right. Well, let's go ahead and share the results here. So we can see we've got kind of a broad swath of folks represented in terms of the audience, from executive folks to large kind of, I guess, majority of operations staff. And then in terms of how well you're prepared, it looks like most folks have taken some basic steps to secure your systems, with a few folks on kind of opposite ends. So I think what my goal has always been in kind of providing this analysis and sharing out the report is really to provide some kind of specific and tangible steps that organizations can take to better protect against the most likely risks that face their organization. So the incident report itself is coming soon, in the final stages of doing the kind of the document editing. And so as attending the webinar today, you'll get the early advanced copy as soon as it comes out. Hopefully that will be here relatively shortly. We got a lot going on. And the complimentary document or kind of report that we put out in addition to our incident report is really our cybersecurity readiness for nonprofits guide. So the incident report really is focusing on the data that we have, and then the incident report, and then the playbook focuses on the specific controls. So yeah, Carolyn, you want to talk a little bit about where folks can find that?
Yep, I just put the link in the chat for downloading the playbook. And I also wanted to just give a quick plug as well for the self-assessment quiz that we have that's also free on our website. And I'll drop that in the chat in just a minute. So it takes about 10 minutes, and it's a really good option for kind of putting in your basic information and getting a feel for where you might be doing a good job and where you might need a little bit more work on your cybersecurity. So I'll drop that in just a minute. Okay, and I think I'm also supposed to read this one. Sorry, Matt. So this is going back to the agenda and our learning objectives. So Matt's going to talk a little bit about the cybersecurity landscape, how remote work has impacted some of the threats and some of the vulnerabilities that we see, our approach to cybersecurity. He's going to go over the types of incidents and the definitions for what the different incidents could be. And then he's going to share some of the report data with us and finish up with the steps to secure your organization. Go ahead.
All right, great. Yeah, so I think it's helpful starting off with just understanding a little bit of the the cybersecurity landscape that we are operating in, and that's one where we really do see persistent and ongoing brute force attacks against your digital identity. So I think it's really great. Nonprofits have done a great job of adopting cloud services, and it's, I think, really helped organizations be productive during this kind of prolonged work from home period. But it also means that the bad guys are also able to attack and try to log into those cloud-based systems because they're so ubiquitously available. We also know that there are lots of sophisticated spear phishing attacks, and in fact, it looks like some reporting shows that almost 90% of all threats come through email, and that's a really prominent avenue for adversaries to use. We also know that organizations are targeted because of the work that they do. And we see this particularly in organizations that work in the think tank or public policy space. Those organizations that have kind of access or adjacent to government really do garner the attention of some of these more sophisticated state-sponsored actors. And then finally, we know that the bad guys are targeting vendors like us. So again, if you work with a managed service provider, they are likely subject to a higher degree of kind of attacks than kind of a regular organization would be because of the nature of the work, because of the access that they have into the system. So so if you're in one of those specialized categories, it's likely that you need to take some additional attention and care to the controls that you have in place to protect your organization. So Microsoft has done a lot of great research around the attacks that they see, and this came out from a report from data from 2020 around cyber attack victims by sector. And here you can see the largest chunk of organizations that are targeted by cyber attacks are in the IT sector, followed by government, and then very at the same level think tanks and NGOs. So again, those types of organizations really do receive kind of an outsized area of attention from these threat actors, and it's important that if you're in those categories, you're really taking extra care to invest in the protections and controls for your organization.
So Matt, with that landscape in mind, can you tell us a little bit what we saw broadly in 2021 that impacted nonprofits around cybersecurity?
Yeah, definitely. So in 2021, there were a couple of big, splashy events that caught a lot of attention as it related to kind of cybersecurity controls. And so the first one in March of last year, there was an adversary called Hafnium that is associated with the Chinese state-sponsored actors, and they were exploiting Microsoft Exchange servers. So there are still Exchange servers out there, and so they were using some vulnerabilities within that platform to get remote access to those systems. So that kind of kicked off the year. Then in July, a vendor that makes remote management and support tools for managed service providers and for larger organizations called Kaseya was a victim of a coordinated ransomware attack where ransomware was launched through their instances. And then at the end of the year, there was a vulnerability that impacted a logging vulnerability. It was called Log4j, and this is a software library that's in many different software applications, and so that was pretty widely impacted. Basically any organization with software installed had to do some follow-up and remediation and discovery to determine if they were vulnerable to this type of attack. And so, there were, like I said, a couple of these really significant, events that occurred last year that, really, I think, shaped some of our response that we saw in terms of our remediations and the incidents that we were focused on protecting against at our clients. And then in terms of the operational trends that really translated into is I think that we are seeing overall, an increase in wire fraud, and we'll talk about a little bit more kind of specific definition about what wire fraud is. We did a joint webinar with your part-time controller to really focus on how to best protect and defend your organization against that. And Carolyn can provide that link as well. But kind of recognizing that that's not just a technology control, but a policy and procedure control. I also think that we're seeing more cases where secure by default is enabled. And so for organizations that are kind of new to Office 365 or Google Workspace, that those organizations are now kind of turning on security features like multi-factor authentication by default, which is, I think, a really positive step. If you've been in either of those platforms for a long time, that's something you have to take a proactive step to do. But many organizations are turning on secure by default, as their baseline option, as opposed to having organizations need to opt in. I think the other big operational trend that we are seeing is really around cyber liability insurance. This has transformed pretty rapidly over the last year, where it's gone from having very loose control requirements where, as long as you filled out the application, you could get coverage, to now we're seeing really strict expectations around requiring multi-factor authentication, requiring EDR, requiring policies and procedures before an organization will even be considered for coverage. And also we're seeing policy premiums really go up pretty dramatically. So, this is a new space as far as insurance goes. And that's really driving some of the compliance that we're seeing amongst the organizations we support, because the insurance companies are demanding it. And then finally, I think this has been the case for a while, but I think it bears, mentioning again, there are significant resources available to nonprofit organizations from the big tech vendors, such as Microsoft Account Guard. Google provides their advanced protection program for organizations that are supporting democracy. And then Cloudflare, which is a DNS or web security provider, also has some free services available through their Project Galileo initiative so nonprofit organizations can get these technology solutions at kind of very low or no cost to help protect their organization.
Matt, I know that we talked about external events that are impacting cybersecurity over the past couple of years. And I know COVID has impacted so many areas of our personal and work lives. Can you tell us a bit of what you're seeing in cybersecurity in relationship to COVID and remote work? Has working remotely and the other challenges nonprofits are facing during the pandemic impacting vulnerabilities or increasing risks? What are you seeing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we saw a big spike, particularly as the work from home shift happened, and COVID was kind of new, related to spam and kind of spear phishing campaigns that were related to vaccinations and those issues. I think on the heels of that, we've started to see an increase in workers' comp fraud claims, and as other employment resources were extended. That's been really taken advantage of by hackers who are using identity theft to make fraudulent workers' comp claims. I think that continued shift or continued work from home environment has meant that many organizations have had to adapt and implement new technology solutions to support their staff. And so that's created some challenges in terms of remote access and secure home environments as well. And I think kind of in that vein, there's also, I think, been an increase that's maybe lessened, as now we're not in year two of the pandemic, but the use of more personal devices to access work resources. I think organizations are becoming aware of that challenge, particularly with a lot of the staff turnover that we are seeing as well. Having staff use personal devices to access work or organization resources, and then they leave, and then there's not really a way to kind of claw that data back, I think has been a risk. And then I think the other challenge we're actually starting to see now is that as organizations bring folks back into the office, I think there's a whole process to kind of get reoriented or realigned around what it means to be back in the office, especially as people have had new computers, and maybe they're not set up for the office wireless, or maybe the office network doesn't meet the same requirements that it did kind of pre-COVID. So I think we're seeing a lot of issues now on the reintegration side in terms of coming back into the office. And then I think the management tools to help support all that has been a lot more difficult if you didn't have that in place ahead of time. So that management and reporting has been challenging. As I mentioned earlier, I think the work from home does open up additional security holes, and that we're concerned about not only the integrity of the office network, but now we have to be concerned about an individual's home network as well, since that can represent another area of attack, and device management and kind of that mobile device management policy, so that we can make sure that systems are updated and getting antivirus updates and patching, no matter if they're out of the office or in the office, is really an area of concern for us. Fortunately, our management tools support that distributed workforce, and so we were well prepared. For organizations that didn't have those kind of tools, or a partner that had cloud-based tools to begin with, I think it was a little bit of a steeper learning curve. So I think that's the approach that we've seen in terms of dealing with some of the security issues associated with more remote work.
Just to remind everyone that we do have this playbook that's available on our site as a free download. I did get a text from chat from someone who was trying to access it and was having a little difficulty. So I will be able to look into that after the webinar, but it is there. People have downloaded it in the past. So hopefully it's just a momentary thing. But we will be sending that link out again as well. And we also have a video on our site where Matt walks through how to use the playbook and the framework, which is a little bit more complicated than we'll be able to get into. Not complicated, it's just a longer conversation than what we're going to be able to do today. But Matt, can you touch on some of the basic cybersecurity practices we outline in the playbook that all nonprofits should be using?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is the graphic that we use. There's lots of different frameworks. I think this is a simplified graphic that we use for small to mid-sized organizations to really emphasize that the work that you do should really start off with policy and policy development. So it's good for organizations to go through that process of, identifying, what data systems do they have? What is the expectation around the use of passwords, and what's the use of corporate devices versus personally owned devices? There's not necessarily one right answer, but it's important for the organization to kind of go through and make that determination on their own. So I think starting with the foundation of IT acceptable use policies, getting that incident response policy in place, maybe having a data retention policy, those would be some of the key elements that we would expect to have at a foundational layer. Then moving on to security awareness training, even though we're a tech company and I love all the tech tools, I really do think that security awareness training is absolutely critical for nonprofit organizations to help defend against the most likely attacks that you're going to experience. And so having staff that are engaged and aware and kind of know what to look for, know how to respond, know how to ask for help is a great return on investment for your IT spending. And then once those kind of foundational pieces are in place, then there's technology solutions available to protect your identity and protect your data and the devices that you're using, the network perimeter, whether that's just your office or now much more distributed, and then protecting your web resources as well. And like I said, there's always more, technology tools that you can layer on top. But I think it's really important to have those fundamentals in place in terms of the policy and the training, so that you have those bases covered and can make better use of those more advanced tools as you can adopt them. So kind of specifically, the foundational practices that we like to see, and as Carolyn mentioned, we have a whole playbook that you can walk through to get more details about this, would be IT policy, security awareness training. It sounds basic, but making sure your computers and the third-party updates are applied and working regularly is good. Make sure you're rebooting your computer weekly so that those updates have a chance to apply. That's really key. Having antivirus in place, and we like to include web filtering as well as part of a multi-layered approach. And then finally, multi-factor authentication is really a key control, and you'll see that reappear as in some of our closing recommendations. But that's a very important piece to protect your digital identity online. At Community IT, we provide device management for over 6,000 devices. And the things that we're able to kind of just deliver as part of that technology solution are the patching and the antivirus and the web filtering. Things like the policy work, things like the security awareness training, and things like MFA do require end user engagement and kind of executive buy-in. And so, those are things that you'll need to kind of plan for more proactively to work on adoption with your staff, as opposed to just, having, basically flipping a switch and kind of getting those protections turned on right away. So let's talk a little bit about some background definitions. I've used some terms already. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page in that regard. So threat actor is a term that is used to kind of define, who's doing the targeting. So that's kind of the entity that's perpetrating the attack. According to the Verizon Data Breach Investigations report, while espionage gets the headlines, it is only about 10% of the breaches, with 86% of those attacks being financially motivated and just 4% caused by these like advanced or state-sponsored threat actors. And so I think that's another important thing to keep in mind. Like, this is cybercrime and it's really financially motivated, and this is kind of big business. And so organizations don't necessarily care about you and your fantastic mission. You're an organization and you have financial resources and they can get them. And so, the mission of your organization is not going to necessarily protect you from cyber criminals. The kind of the specific incident itself would be kind of a top level term, right? Many security issues are security incidents. That's an event, an alert or something that could indicate a more sophisticated or serious issue, and that could turn into the things that we're really concerned about, which is a breach. And so that's an incident that results in the confirmed disclosure, not just the potential disclosure of data or assets to an unauthorized party.
Thank you so much for those definitions, Matt. I know that's one thing that I kind of struggle with is all of the lingo. But if all the attendees remember, one of the topics we wanted to cover today was to define some of the types of incidents and what they involve. Before, Matt, you're going to talk about the report and the number of incidents that we saw. So could you talk a little bit more and define maybe the types of incidents that we're encountering?
Yeah, so the things and we categorize these, there's a lot of different ways to categorize incidents. I think this is what we've done that makes sense for us. And so we categorize things as spam. We want to know about that. That's, kind of the junk messages. Again, the identity of the sender is pretty clear, but it's just unwanted messages. And that's, I would think, compared with the spear phishing, or sometimes also called business email compromise. And that's really a much more sophisticated form where the sender is obfuscated. They're trying to get you to take some action. So again, buy this gift card, click on this link, type in your password to access this document. That's often the first step in a much more sophisticated attack, with many times the ultimate goal of this kind of wire fraud, which is a criminal classification that talks about stealing money basically through electronic means. And so again, if that could be updating a wire transfer to a third party to kind of steal funds that way, gift card fraud, those things all fall under that category of wire fraud. Kind of moving into the device-based attacks, we've got malware, again, a top-level generic classification for just kind of like malicious software. It's maybe just kind of annoying compared to virus, which is kind of a bit more malicious, spreads, from one computer to another, or kind of rendering the computer unusable. We actually don't see this as much anymore. And then I think the thing that we're all really concerned about, which is ransomware, where your data is recognized, unreadable, and then the way to get it back is to pay some sort of ransom in cryptocurrency that's untraceable. That's a very serious concern and a big kind of dollar value amount when it comes to cybercrime. Then we also have things that are around compromising your digital identity. So we're really focused on protecting against account compromise. And so that's when somebody other than you gets access to your account. And the way that they do that is often through some sort of, kind of brute force attack or credential stuffing, where the bad guys are kind of harvesting credentials off the web for these various data breaches and then reusing them and just trying to log in over and over and over again until they get in. And then finally, we have, some more focused attacks, supply chain, kind of attacking one organization to get to another, again, attacking a managed service provider to get to their clients, maybe attacking a nonprofit organization to get to board members, that sort of thing. is something that we want to be aware of and protect against. And then we have the advanced persistent threat. So again, these are state-sponsored actors that are really focused on targeting and maintaining persistence at an organization. So kind of getting in specifically for think tanks, seeing what's going on, who are they talking to, what type of policies are being developed, who are they working with. That's the kind of the category there.
Matt, we have a question in the Q&A of whether paying ransom works. Do people get their data back generally? Do nonprofits get their data back, or is it gone for good?
No, I would not recommend paying the ransom. It's not a guarantee. Oftentimes, the criminal operators are under surveillance, and so the systems that they're using to decrypt data can be disrupted by law enforcement. And so, we would not recommend paying a ransom. It's really important to have good backups of all your data in a third-party system that you have access to, so that if and when you do have a ransomware attack, you're able to recover that data from your own systems, as opposed to relying on some kind of a criminal decrypting your data after you get Bitcoin. And so we don't want to pay ransom. And we want to make sure we've got our data in systems that we have control, that are disconnected from other accounts, so that we have the ability to recover that data when necessary. Great question. Thank you for that. And if there's others, please chat them in. So just a note, again, sample size of the organizations that we work with. We started off supporting about 5,300 devices. We ended up the year supporting about 6,000 devices. And so this is the data that we're gathering through our service desk to generate the report information that we have. So we've grown over time, and we've been able to have a broader impact to support organizations regardless of their geographic location, because of our the support tools and the capacities that we have. So before I share the incidents that we responded to last year, I'm going to just launch another poll here to get a sense of the biggest cybersecurity concerns for the audience today. There's a lot of bad things that can happen, and I'm curious to get a sense of what's the biggest concern. Is it this advanced persistent threat actor that's kind of maintaining persistence on your network, compromise of your account, maybe they're accessing information in your organization? That ransomware threat certainly makes a lot of big splash on the news. Got wire fraud and financial loss.
Matt, you're asking about the things that people are worried about, not necessarily what's already happened to them.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Although that might make it something that they're still worried about.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I mean, what's the biggest concern? I mean, I think it sometimes gets phrased as what keeps you up at night. I don't think any of these things hopefully are not keeping you up at night. But again, I think what you're concerned about, and then what you want to be able to kind of align your organization's protection against. So again, looks like we've got responses pretty broad across the across the spectrum here. So I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. And I think seeing account compromise being the highest area of concern, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think it certainly represents somebody's kind of accessing something that isn't theirs, and it feels really personal, and I think does carry a pretty huge risk to the organization in terms of which data could be potentially exposed, or how that compromised account could then be used to kind of pivot and target other organizations. So,
just for the people who are listening on the podcast, or maybe can't see as well, some of the other responses were advanced persistent threat, ransomware, compromised account, wire fraud or financial loss, data exfiltration, insider staff threats, which probably be like embezzlement or that sort of thing. And then I'm a little bit surprised that all of the above is as low as it is, with only 22%, because I think that would be what I would think.
Yes, I think there's lots to be concerned about. So for us, and the incidents that we categorized and responded to as part of our service desk, the biggest number of threats was related to spam, followed by spear phishing or business email compromise, right? So where the identity of the sender is obfuscated, they're trying to get you to click on a link or take some other action. We had this year, for the first time, we've kind of broken out our account compromise from suspected down and then confirmed. So again, in some cases that account compromise suspected could manifest itself as part of that business email compromise, right? You get an email, it looks like it's coming from the executive director, maybe it's not clear. And so some additional investigation is really required to make sure that we can confirm that, yes, even though the email address says it's from your executive director, whenever we look in more detail, we find out, oh, this is actually a spoofed account. And so the account is not compromised, but there's some spoofing going on. So they're faking the address. And so we had quite a few of those suspected account compromises occur last year. And then we did actually have 32 confirmed account compromises that we had to respond to across our client base. You can see that we have a kind of a new category this year, or for the last 2 years, went back to look at brute force attacks. This is something that we're able to more accurately report on for those organizations that still have servers on premise. And so again, if you're an organization that has, what's called a remote desktop server, if there's an open port on the internet, so RDP, it is almost guaranteed that you're getting brute force attacks. And so the bad guys just are cycling through all of those passwords to try to find an account that they can log into and then kind of take actions from there. So again, we've got a range of attacks. And as I mentioned, this is the 4th year that we've been doing this. And so we can see that the first year of data that we reported on was actually in 2018. We categorized 233 incidents. In 2019, that jumped up to a little over 500. In 2020, we had 690 incidents, and in 2021, we had 696 incidents. So, so maybe a flattening out, and we'll see some of that data over time. And so here we can see a little bit of the trends of the various accounts or security incidents over time. I will just note that we have 2 different scales. So on the right-hand side, our scale is goes from 0 up to 70 incidents. And so that's, where we classify issues like that brute force attack. We had 32 in 2020, and then another 32 in 2021. The brute force attacks, were, 40 couple in 2020, and that spiked up to 64 in 2021. And then the spam has kind of gone up and stayed consistent. And then we actually saw a little bit of a decline in the spear phishing data, which is a little bit easier to see. The other types of incidents that we respond to, again, ransomware, we did have 2 issues of ransomware that we responded to last year after not having any for a couple of years. And then malware and kind of virus activity overall tends to be very low for the organizations that we manage. I think because of the proactive security controls that we have in place, the proactive patching, the antivirus, the web filtering, I think that all contributes to a relatively low, incidence of virus activity on the computers that we are managing.
Matt, we have a quick question from chat of what is advanced persistent threat? Can you remind us of what that is?
Yeah, so the advanced persistent threat, the definition there would really be a state-sponsored actor. So again, Russia, China, North Korea, all a number of countries have significant cyber capabilities that are really operate in a slightly different with slightly different incentives than kind of cyber crime. Cybercrime, right? They're there to make money. Ransomware, that's kind of the tools of the trade. Advanced persistent threats are really interested in maintaining access and kind of getting data and learning about that. That's why think tanks and policy organizations tend to be targeted. They don't see as much ransomware activity, but they really do see really sophisticated threats from state-backed threat groups that are trying to get access to their networks. Again,
excellent. Thank you for answering that. I just want to make sure we're keeping up with the time as well. So
great. So here we can see, email security incidents over time, I think, has flattened out a little bit. and we even see a reduction in spear phishing. I think one of the reasons whenever we were going back through the data is that we saw a pretty big increase in the number of email protection tools that we were able to deploy last year. And so here you can see some of the business email compromise protection tools that we used. We went from having 1,500 seats deployed at the beginning of the year to over 2,400 seats at the end of the year. And so I think that does, that to me makes a impressionable difference in terms of the actual number of incidents that our clients are seeing, because the security tools that are put in place are actually doing what they're supposed to do, which is removing or blocking those malicious emails from reaching the inboxes or removing them after they've been delivered. But I think, again, with the data that we see, this is from the Verizon data breach incident report, basically every organization, is experiencing malicious email. So here, this chart again shows like company size from 0 to 10,000, on the bottom, malicious URLs, if you've got 50 people, you're almost guaranteed to receive malicious email that has like a malicious link in it. And then you're almost guaranteed to kind of receive malicious packages. So again, there's gonna be like mobile files, trying to get access to systems. So again, every organization is really targeted heavily through email-based attacks. And so I think it's worthwhile, investing in protecting there. On the device and identity attacks, that kind of is going up and down as well. The brute force attacks on remote desktop servers is a really big threat area that we're working with our clients to kind of try to decommission those systems and shift away, because they do represent such a significant risk to the clients. Again, if you have on-premise servers that are open to the internet, that's a really risky scenario to be in, and it's important to take extra precautions to secure and protect those on-premise resources from those external threat actors.
I love all of these charts and graphs, Matt. Thank you so much for putting this all together. Can you talk a little bit more about trends and like some takeaways that would help us, kind of focus how we understand this data?
Yeah, I think it's good. Lots of numbers, lots of data. So what do we do? I think the one thing that was interesting for me to see is that maybe a cybersecurity incident's holding steady. So we added several hundred several hundred users that we supported last year, but even with growth of 10% of our 15% growth in the number of clients that we support, we still saw basically about the same number of security incidents. So that's positive, I think, to me. I don't think cyber issues are going away anytime soon, but I do think that use of these tools for email protection helps address that kind of big category. I think kind of going back to the beginning slides that we had in terms of the overall landscape, attacks against big vendors like Kaseya, like third party as a way to compromise systems is something I think we all need to be aware of. Again, in 2020, the Blackbot had a security breach. So I think that type of attack is not going away. It's not going away anytime soon. And so I think as organizations rely on third party vendors to provide services and host data, it's important to understand kind of what protections are in place, how your data is being managed, how you can recover. So, just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean you can kind of forget about it. So I think that's an important takeaway. I think, it's also from the data we saw, account compromise is still at a very high, it's a very, very high level there. And then again, I think implementing the right tools can help reduce the risk. So again, if you are taking the steps to implement the advanced email protection tools, that really reduces the risk. If you can implement security awareness training, I think that can provide education and capacity building for your staff to kind of know what's malicious and what's not. So again, I think all of those things help to contribute to helping to just protect your organization and your organization's data a little bit more. I think, kind of the other data analysis, those advanced persistent threat actors really do target policy and think tank orgs, and that, continues to be something that we are seeing increasing sophistication in terms of how those attacks are occurring. We also see that if an organization has been compromised once, then more attacks are likely. You kind of get on the bad guys list, and they know you and your organization are out there. And so if you have had an account compromise, it's likely, or if you've had some other sort of data breach, we see a lot more activity or interest from those providers, kind of over time. I would say, we work with some social service organizations. I think we see more kind of business email compromise attacks there, kind of targeting that, kind of that sector more so than some of the other some of the other organization types. And then I think the other thing that I would just highlight is that MFA is incredibly effective in preventing account compromise. So kind of tying back to the number of accounts that we saw compromised in 2021, which is 32, none of those users had multi-factor authentication enabled on their accounts. So it's just a really striking statistic. I think it's why we see in many cyber liability insurance applications that they are demanding that multi-factor authentication be enabled. And we can see it in the data. So again, none of the account compromises that we responded to, the staff had not turned on MFA. And so I think at this point, it's really a key security control that every organization needs to have deployed across any solution that they can log into from the web.
We have a couple of good resources on our website about multi-factor authentication, and just kind of briefly explaining how it works. And we even have a little training video of how it works and why to require it. So you can look up those resources on our site. But we haven't had we've had a couple of questions come in, but we've answered them as we've been going along. But I wanted to just pose this question of why don't we see 100% of nonprofits adopting multi-factor authentication to keep their accounts more secure?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think for many organizations, it's because it's not just a technical solution that can get turned on in the background. It requires your users to kind of take some proactive steps to implement. It's because organizations have not, or vendors have not made it a requirement. That is starting to shift. This year we saw Salesforce make the change. MFA is now required for all accounts, and so my hope is that we see much more adoption of multi-factor authentication. It's becoming a lot easier to implement. I think staff, are becoming more familiar with it, as it is required in many other areas of our life. If you have a bank or credit card, like, they are all implementing kind of two-step or multi-factor authentication that combines something that which is your password, along with something that you have, which is often, in the best of cases, a security token on your phone or a physical token. It can also be a text message or a secondary email authentication. So again, that's, my goal is that everybody gets that implemented here this year.
We have a couple more questions coming in, but we do have a question slide that's coming up in just a couple of slides. So I'm going to ask this one first for us. Why don't nonprofits invest more in cybersecurity? And that's a big one. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I don't know. I mean, it's a rhetorical question, I think, to some extent. And I think, organizations are really focused on the kind of the mission, and kind of anything that, cybersecurity feels like a luxury to some extent. It's like an extra. And so until it's really required or mandated, organizations, have other priorities. And so I think that's often why, that extra expense of, turning on multi-factor, or having a formal security awareness training program, or, moving from regular antivirus to kind of a higher end, endpoint EDR endpoint detection tool. It's just extra cost, and we're really, organizations are kind of focused on minimizing that overhead. So I think that that's a big opportunity for, for funders and foundations to kind of come in, and, we know the stuff is important. We know it's critical. We know it's effective. And so to kind of help reduce that cost, I think is really important. So, we don't want to just kind of focus on all the bad things that we've seen and all the things, that could go wrong, but we really want to focus on, hey, here's some specific steps that you can take at your organization to improve. And so while we have a whole cybersecurity playbook that you can download, and I would encourage you to use as a reference, I would say, let's make sure you start with an IT acceptable use policy to kind of protect against those misguided and misaligned IT initiatives. It can help set the groundwork for making good technology decisions later on. I think implementing a security awareness training program is a really great way and a really great return on investment. So, not just relying on ad hoc training or free resources, of which there's lots of good free stuff, and we have free stuff on our website, but having a formal way of testing, training, and engaging staff, I think is a really great step to take. And then finally, turning on multi-factor authentication, not just on kind of your primary Google or your primary Office 365 platform, but carrying that into the other systems that we use. And I know organizations are using 5, 10, 15, 20, different cloud-based solutions. And so just think, if you can log into it over the web, the bad guys can too. And so putting that speed bump of multi-factor authentication is a really effective way to ensure the integrity of your accounts there.
And I think people are a lot more used to having to do some kind of secondary authentication, like when you log onto your bank account or what have you. So it's not as big of a lift as it used to be. I think if we go to the next slide now, I want to be mindful of time. I'm going to put into the chat as well. We have more information on all of these core cybersecurity functions that we can talk to you about, provide. We can do assessments. There's a self-assessment quiz on our site as well. But I really want to make sure that we get to our questions. So Matt, there are some questions in the Q&A tab if you want to have a look. And then there are also a couple that have been sent in through chat, which I think one that a couple of different people have asked about is SSO, secure sign-on, single sign-on.
Mm-hmm.
And how that relates to MFA.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. So if you look at our foundational security control, we would suggest everybody start with a password manager, right? So a way to store and manage and generate unique passwords for all the different sites that you have. Single sign-on kind of takes that to the next level. So instead of storing 40 passwords for 40 different applications, you use one password with multi-factor authentication that then has access to those 40 different applications. And so from a workflow perspective, it makes it a lot easier to support and manage and monitor those authentications into all of those different systems. And so if you can do single sign-on, I think that's a better way to go. It's kind of streamlined. I think you need to be of a certain size, and I think a certain sophistication to do that. I think we start seeing organizations tackle SSO whenever they get to be 20, 25 staff and up. So again, if you are in Office 365, you can do single sign-on through Microsoft's enterprise applications. It's a very good platform that has native integrations with many tools. Okta was mentioned in the chat again, has a really nice single sign-on platform. They do have nonprofit discounts, and so that can be another good tool to use. Okta has also had a security breach of actually a third-party vendor that they used, and I think they have not done a particularly good job of communicating with their staff and customers about that. But I think these sorts of things are unavoidable. And so I think the solution is not to kind of go back and say, well, we're going to go back to having the server in our office and everybody has to come into the office and we're going to have all of our applications on premise. But I think organizations need to have good systems and processes in place to understand what data they have in which system and how it's being used and accessed. And so whenever a vendor does have a security issue or a security incident, then you're able to react and respond. And then I think it's also important to have a good vetting process to, when you're working with third-party vendors, to understand, do they have a good process in place? Do you have confidence in that? What steps are they taking to secure your data and, provide response whenever there are issues. So
There are so many good questions in the questions. I know we're not going to get to all of them. I think maybe if you go to the slide that has your contact information, and that's available on our website as well, so people can get to it. If you put a question in and we didn't get a chance to get Matt to answer it, I will include those in our transcript, and then we'll have a little written response from Matt about what you should, think about or do. So we're going to answer all the questions. I just don't think we're going to have a chance to get to it right now. So we have Matt's contact information there. And like I said, that is available on our site as well. So people can get in touch with you and maybe ask you their questions directly. If you can go to the next slide, I want to just make sure we let people know about our next webinar, which is May 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. This is going to be a panel talking about building a foundation for IT innovation. So I think a lot of us have maybe I'm seeing from some of the questions too, like when there are some tech projects that just don't work, and there are some tech projects that are really fantastic and help you out a lot with your efficiency or effectiveness or with having greater security. So this webinar is going to talk a little bit about a framework to think about your organization, your culture, your assets, and when it makes sense to invest in either an innovative technology or an innovative use of existing technologies that your nonprofit might want to put together in interesting new ways. So we know that nonprofits are always trying to get a lot out of, as much as they can out of what they have. So that's going to be an interesting webinar, and I invite you back to it. I just wanted to make sure we go back to our learning objectives and talk about our takeaways. So the next slide, Matt. I think we covered everything we were trying to cover. Matt gave us a good overview of the cybersecurity landscape and our approach to cybersecurity, the different layers that you need to have. And if you need more information on that, of course, we have our playbook. Thank you so much, Matt, for going into depth about the definitions of the lingo and the types of incidents that we're seeing, new incidents, old incidents that are coming back, incidents that are should be concerning to all of us, as we saw in that poll. And then we did talk a little bit about basic steps to take to secure your nonprofit. I see in the chat, I think a lot of people have a lot of really good questions. So that means you're already thinking about it and doing your research and maybe struggling or confident in what you need to implement in your nonprofit. So that is great to see. And I think one of my takeaways, Matt, from something you said earlier is that it's difficult not to see this as just a cost. But if you think about it as an investment, I think that makes a lot more sense. So you're preventing larger costs down the road by making an investment now, and that nonprofits who can see that as an opportunity maybe have a step up on nonprofits who can only see it as a cost and have difficulty making that investment because they just see it as a cost. So this was just such a wonderful webinar. I'm really so excited that we were able to have so many great people join us today. And Matt, thank you so much. I have to remind people of the survey. So make sure that you click on the survey when you close your webinar. And I just wanted to put a quick plug in for a conference that's coming up in May also. The Good Tech Fest is a virtual conference at goodtechfest.com. And we will be presenting about innovation and IT foundations, but they also just have a bunch of good, interesting sounding keynote speakers. So I urge you to check that out, and we'll have a link on our website to that as well. So Matt, I just wanted to thank you again so much for helping us think through this. And I don't know if you have any final words you wanted to leave people with.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been lots of good comments here about multi-factor authentication and the importance of that. And I would, kind of wholeheartedly, advocate for organizations to take that proactive step. there's lots of, edge cases and all kinds of other, permutations that you can kind of talk about. But I think what we see is that, the most likely scenario is that, there's going to be some email-based attack or some brute force attack. And so being able to, block those malicious emails or equipping your staff to identify them and then protecting your accounts with multi-factor authentication is going to go a long way to protecting the integrity of your organization's accounts and data.
Yeah, I think I got that from you too, is you can't just do it with tools. You have to have your people on the front lines, being careful and helping each other to be careful. So thank you again so much. This was a great presentation, and everyone on this, all the attendees will be receiving an email that will let you know how to access the video, podcast, and transcript. So thanks again.